Now we are going to do in the verbs both transitive and intransitive. I want you to look carefully. Most verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. And that's what we're going to see. Most verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. Okay? All what we need to remember is most. Most verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. Transitive and intransitive verbs, okay? Now, the girls, first I'll write all the sentence for you. Look carefully. The girls ran a race. The boy eats ice cream. Ram flies kites. She speaks English. The author writes books. Here we have transitive. Now, let's look at the verbs, intransitive verbs in these sentences. The girls ran. The boy eats. Ram flies. She speaks. Author writes. Now we will look at how the same verbs are used as intransitive too. So when you do both together, you'll understand better. Okay, let's look at the first one. A. The girls ran a race. The girl runs very fast. The girl runs very fast. And the next one we have, the boy eats ice cream. The boy eats slowly. The boy eats slowly. Ram flies kites. An aeroplane flies. An aeroplane flies. She speaks well. She speaks well. He writes. He writes very fast. Here, in transitive verbs, we learned that it needs an object to complete, to make sense. The subject, girl, she needs an object to complete the verb ran. So she ran a race. The subject, the boy, needs an object, ice cream. He eats an ice cream. Object, ice cream, to complete that act. Ram, the subject, he flies something. To complete the sense, you need kites. The subject here, she, the transitive verb needs an object, English, what to say, what she speaks. The author writes. In the transitive verb, the author writes what? He writes something. He writes book. So, objects, race, ice cream, kites, English book, all these helps the transitive verb ran, eats, flies, speaks and writes. Now, what we are looking at is most verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. Now, let's look at the same verbs, how it is used in intransitive, ran. We said the word ran. Look at the intransitive verb, how the same word ran is used. Now, the girl runs very fast. There is no object there. The girl runs. That's an intransitive verb. Here, the boy eats an ice cream. There, the boy eats slowly. The boy eats fast. Eats. The same verb is used in intransitive verb. Now here, Ram flies kite. We need an object. Here, it simply says airplane flies. It simply says airplane flies. It can fly high, low, whatever. The girl speaks. Here, she speaks well or she speaks badly. Speaks is used. Here, author writes. Here, he writes well, he writes fast, he scribbles, he writes badly, whatever, writes. Now, in both these, what we are looking here is the verb, most of these verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. All we need to remember in intransitive, it needs an object to complete the sense. But when you look at both, here, when we look at speaks, he speaks in English, here, speaks well. So, what we are learning in this exercise is verbs can be used as transitive or intransitive. Remember, intransitive, when you say transitive, object is needed. Without an object, the subject cannot make complete sense. We need to understand that a verb can be used as transitive or intransitive. We will do another set of sentences for us to understand better. The boy flies kite. The boy fly kites. He runs a hostel. Peter opens the shop. At 8. writes books. He writes books. The driver stopped the train. The driver stops or stopped. Driver stopped the train. The horse drew the cart. The cart. And finally, the mouse. The mouse stole food. Stole food. Now I'll write the intransitive and then we look at the verb, how it's used in both transitive and intransitive. Okay? First, birds fly. Birds fly in the air. He runs fast. School opens at 9 o'clock. He writes legibly. He writes legibly. We opened. We stopped there. We stopped. We stopped there a little. There a little. He drew near me. He drew near me. The mouse stole. The mouse stole into its hole. Into its hole. Now, in both transitive and intransitive, let's look at the verbs, how the verbs are being used. What did we say? Most verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. All we need to remember, in the transitive, the subject needs an object, but here they will not be. Now, look at that. The boy flies. The boys fly kites. Okay? The boys fly kites. Boys. What do they fly? They're flying something. So, to complete your subject needs, the boys need an object, that's a kite. Boys fly. They're flying something. That's okay by itself. But in the transitive, we need an object. Boys fly kites. He runs. In the transitive, we need an object. He runs what? He runs a hostel for boys or girls. Peter opens. What? Opens the shop. Object shop. He writes. What does he write? Subject needs an object. He writes books. The driver stopped. The driver stopped what? The train or bus or car. The horse drew the cart. The mouse stole food. So, he runs. The Peter opens the shop. He rides. The driver stopped. The horse drew. The mouse told. These transitive verbs fly, runs, opens, rides, stopped, grew, and stole. So we are looking at how these same verbs can be used as intransitive. Let's look at that. Fly. Birds fly. Can be in the air, off the air, over the cloud, whatever. Okay? It does not need an object. Birds fly in the air. He runs fast. And here what do we have? He runs a hotel, a hostel, or whatever it is. School opens. He writes legibly, scribbly, neatly, badly. We stopped. He drew. The mouse told. Now, what we are looking at is all verbs can be, or rather most verbs can be used as transitive or intransitive. In the transitive, all we need to know is the subject needs an object to complete the sentence. It needs the action, the subject is doing an action. Verb is a doing word, action. The action passes on to an object to complete, to make sense. The boys doing an action. The boys fly. What are they flying? The boys fly. From the subject, the verb passes on to the object, the action done. What action? Kite. He runs. He, the subject. What is the action? Runs. Running what? Hostel, hotel, whatever. Peter opens. It's not complete. So, the subject passes on the verb, the action to what? Opens the shop, opens the window, open whatever. He writes. The subject he, the verb writes. It completes the sense by the object books. You write books. So, all you need to remember in transitive, there should be an object. But in intransitive, it completes, it makes sense by itself. When you say, he stopped, he writes. It's used in the sentence, the same verbs are used. But when it is being used, remember in the transitive, you've got to have an object. We'll do one more exercise to know how verbs can be used as transitive and as well as intransitive. She runs a hotel. The ox cart he writes novels. Ram flies. She speaks. The girls here he runs fast. He drew near me. He writes well. An airplane flies. She speaks well. Speaks well. The girls run fast. Okay, now just look at here. Look at all these sentences. We are talking about most verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. Here you have she runs. She runs a hotel. He runs fast. The ox drew a cart. He drew near me. Here he writes. He writes novel. Here you say he writes well. Airplane, ram flies, airplane. An airplane flies. Here in transitive you say she speaks. Hindi, she speaks well. Here the girls ran a race, the girls run. The girls run fast. Now, what we are talking is verbs can be used as transitive and intransitive. Here, intransitive, we are looking at is the verbs run, drew, writes, flies, speaks and ran. They need an object. What are the objects? Hotel, cart, novels, airplane, Hindi, race. All these are objects for completing these verbs. So the subject needs an object to complete the action done. So he runs a hotel, the ox drew a cart, he writes novels, Ram flies airplane, she speaks Hindi, and the girl run a race. So it's very, very clear. In transitive verb, it needs an object. Always remember that. Now, let's look at the intransitive. Same verbs are used as intransitive. He runs fast. He drew near me. He writes well or he writes badly. Airplane flies. She speaks well. Girls run fast. So, we have learned the usage of verbs either as transitive or intransitive. A verb is an action word. There are two kinds of verb, that is transitive verb and intransitive verb.